everything that led up to you arriving here today. As you feel comfortable, please put your feet on the ground, close your eyes, and take a couple of breaths, and perhaps drink in, when you open your eyes again, the lovely beauty that surrounds us. We acknowledge that we are on the traditional homelands of the Swabash, the Coast Salish native people, the Puyallup and the Muckleshoot people, who continue to steward these lands today. We commit to uplifting native voices, experiences, and histories, as well as promoting social justice actions for and with the indigenous people of this land and beyond. And our service today has been organized by the Social Justice Group, and we have some wonderful guest speakers who are local activists with us, so we're excited for that. As we settle in, we acknowledge that our congregation is committed to individual freedom of belief, welcomes diversity, and seeks to promote a sense of community and fosters religion, which enriches the spirit. Whoever you are, whomever you love, however you have arrived here, you belong here. And I'd like to invite Pamela Gott to light our chalice and share a reading.
The reading today is, "Let us make this earth a heaven." Let us make this earth a heaven, right here, right now. Who knows what existence's death will bring? Let us create a heaven here on earth, where love and truth and justice reign. Let us welcome at all our pearly gates, welcome all at our pearly gates, our freedom table, amid singing and great rejoicing, with all our lovely colors, straight, gay, transgender, bisexual, and all the ways of loving each other's bodies, young, old, fat, thin, variously abled, gentle, cranky, joyous, sorrowing. Let no one feel excluded. Let no one feel alone. May the rich let loose their wealth to rain upon the poor, and may the poor share their riches with those too used to money. May we come to venerate the earth, our mother, and tend her with wisdom and compassion. May we make our earth an Eden, a paradise. May no one wish to leave her. May hate and warfare cease to clash in causes too old and tired to name: religion, nationalism, the false god of gold, deep-rooted ethnic hatreds. May all these disperse and wane, and may we see each other's true selves. May we all dwell together in peace and joy and understanding. Let us make a heaven here on earth before it is too late. Let us make this earth a heaven for each other's sake. And this is from a UUA author, Tess Baumberger.
Thank you, Pamela. I love how the readings always have a line or two that just zings for you, so probably each of us could come up with a different one. So we're going to move into our opening reading, which is going to be offered by Marilee Runyon.
Good morning. This is called Blame Capitalism, Not Humanity, and it's an excerpt from a piece written by Chris Saltmarsh, a co-founder of Labor for a Green New Deal. Unlike the IPPC reports, assessments of likely degrees of warming, anticipated extreme heat, and predicted sea level rises, the suggestion that humanity in general is to blame is not a scientific fact. It is an ideological one. In this instance, it insulates the ruling class from blame. This is unlikely to be the explicit intention of the scientists at the IPCC. The popular tendency to talk about human-caused climate change is surely a response to well-funded climate denial. However, climate denial is now no longer the main blockage. Instead, it's the delay and inaction of the capitalist class. It is capitalists who profit from the climate crisis while the poorest suffer. It is the capitalist system putting profit above all else that blocks decarbonization while the world burns. Of course, it is technically correct to say that climate change is human-induced. As far as I know, the capitalist class are all human. But this doesn't mean that all humans have played a role in producing the crisis. True, some of us benefit materially from the fruits of fossil capitalism. It's unavoidable that fossil fuel extraction has been the basis of modern civilization and provided improvements to many lives. But most people are also exploited, alienated, and marginalized within this system. We consume the carbon-intensive products of capitalism, but we have no say about the fundamental conditions of production that are driving our climate to break down. A worker on an oil refinery does not share culpability with the capitalist who exploits them to profit from oil production. Indigenous communities violently displaced from their land to make way for a coal mine do not share blame with the governments forcing these projects through. We might as well talk about mammal-induced or earthling-induced climate change. It would be just as true, only at an even further level of abstraction from the real culprits. It would, of course, be true to say that climate change is not necessarily unique to the capitalist mode of production. To briefly engage in counter-history, it is surely true that any human civilization to have discovered fossil fuels would have harnessed them and inadvertently set the wheels of climate change in motion. The unique malice of capitalism, though, is in its inability to reverse the trend. We have now known about the causes and effects of climate change for several decades, yet capitalism's priority of maximizing short-term profit has crowded out the need to transition our energy systems. We are not all equally responsible for climate breakdown. Our individual behaviors, even taken in aggregate, cannot propel rapid and just decarbonization without a planned transformation of the economy. We can either choose to indulge in a misanthropic climate politics that puts humanity in general on the hook while obfuscating the true cause of the crisis, or we can embrace a humanist and socialist vision of climate justice that tells a story of human potential and the possibility of a better world, making the best of the climate we inherit.
Thank you, Marilee, for that reading. Our first song is hymn 203, All Creatures of the Earth and Sky. So please rise in body and spirit and join in singing hymn 203, which is in your gray hymnal. The gray hymnal 203.
Rise
I'd now like to introduce our guest speakers. Kevin Jones is a steering committee member of the Washington Indivisible Network, WIN, and leads the WIN elections group. And closer to home, Kevin organizes with Indivisible Vashon and the Vashon Climate Action Group. He also chairs the Equity, Social Justice, and Inclusion Committee of the Vashon Maury Island Community Council. James Rickard is a member of the Washington Indivisible Network, as well as being on the Indivisible Vashon leadership team. He's a member of the Equity, Social Justice, and Inclusion Committee. James is also active with the Vashon Climate Action Group and is currently focusing on the creation of a Vashon Maury Island Climate Action Plan. So, welcome to both of you.
Thank you, Julia. James, you can join me at any time if you'd like. I would like to start out by letting everybody know that Vashon Maury Islands, if you compared us to across the entire country, we are the number 6th highest instantiation of rooftop solar in the entire country. So give us a high five, slap each other on the backs, shake your neighbor's hands. So you would think that we might subsequently have like pretty low carbon emissions, right, when it comes to having set that very high standard. But surprisingly, when King County calculates our climate pollution, they say differently. They say we're actually above average in our emissions. So what a conundrum. How is it that we can reconcile those two different things? Well, first of all, before we start to talk about that, I'd like to really recognize the interconnectedness, the understanding that Unitarians share, because there are so many moving parts and pieces to this complex situation. But we'd like to shed a little bit of light on that and let people know what it is that we're working to try to accomplish. Getting back to the conundrum, you know, Vashon Maury Island is home to a lot of houses which were built years and years ago. They weren't built to the modern standards with 6-inch walls and heavy insulation. We also, of course, have ferry travel, which contributes to some climate pollution. And, you know, the island was built from the outside in, right? Starting with water residents, leading eventually to land houses. And so a lot of the neighborhoods are dispersed and require driving to get around. So, you know, there's really, oh, by the way, the climate crisis. So thanks, Marilee, for pointing out, you know, the challenges that we face. And oftentimes we hear about climate commitments that are commitments, but not actions that result in the outcomes that we seek. So we definitely have some challenges in terms of how we move forward. I would like to just share briefly a little bit of history of how I got started in this. I started calling Puget Sound Energy some years ago now, asking how their customers could help move them away from using coal. Now realize this was a fossil fuel company whose CEO was part of the American Petroleum Institute. I believe she was the chair at the time. So you can imagine, you know, the kind of reception I got was not really like overwhelmingly, okay, let's get on with this and see how we can make this happen. But 8 years later, after joining with others, we ended up passing the Clean Energy Transformation Act, otherwise known as CETA. And what CETA does, it requires all of our electricity to be carbon neutral by 2040 and carbon free by 2045. And no coal and electricity in a few short years. I believe 2030 is when that occurs. So, or actually 2025, I think it's right around the corner. So, in other words, when we work together, we can accomplish great things. Marilee, you mentioned the capitalism in the industries that are driving some of this. So yes, there is a voice that we have. And eventually, that company will get there in time. Fortunately, right now, there's bills in the legislature that has another couple weeks that will determine other significant outcomes. So we'd like to talk a little bit about that as well. Another important thing is the market, which does drive so much of this, Marilee, as was in your reading, may also be changing, right? We hear about states that have a lot of wind are now leading in wind and solar installations. Just locally, the Washington Puget Sound Energy's liquid natural gas plant in Tacoma, which I'm sure most, if not all of us, are very familiar with. Thank you, booze down. No, go away, go away. They apparently had plans to expand that operation, but the market says that it's not viable. So we have some cause for hope, I think, and activism, of course. So let me talk a little bit about the climate legislation that we have. You may or may not have heard about the Vashon Mori Environment and Climate Agenda. So this is an annual agenda working with groups on the island like Save Our Wild Salmon, Backbone Campaign, other groups who have specific legislative or regulatory goals that they want to achieve. So we bring that together into an agenda, and we talk about it at the Vashon Mori Island Community Council, and we pass the motions. They've all passed for the last 2 years. And it includes quite a number of bills that we are wanting to move through the legislature. Now, our track record this year has some blemishes. Zero Waste Vashon brought the REWRAP Act, which is the RAP Act is to basically hold manufacturers accountable for the pollution of their packaging. So it would increase recycling, for example, and have more environmentally friendly packaging. Unfortunately, that bill is not moving forward this session. The Right to Repair Act, right? When you want to put a new battery in your phone and that supplier says, oh, I'm sorry, we don't sell batteries for those to the public. You have to buy a new phone. The Right to Repair Act is also not moving forward. Another one, fair access to community solar, which is basically, community solar is truly where somebody puts a large solar installation on the island and you can buy a share in the output because your house is in the shade or the roof isn't suitable for solar. Unfortunately, that bill has not moved forward. Okay, so I'm starting out with the bad news, as you might imagine. But it just points out that together we can make progress. There is a bill moving forward, which is basically energy labeling of existing residential buildings. And the bill does not require us to have energy labeling of our homes. It sets up a system by which you could. And in communities where they have this, homeowners are motivated to improve the weatherization of their homes because it increases their value. And they know the market, when people see the energy rating on your home, they'll know, oh, this is a home that I might prefer to buy. And of course, buyers are more savvy about what they're buying. And so it protects people in both directions, if you will. That bill is still moving forward. It passed the Senate Environment Committee and is now in rules, which basically is geeky talk for, it's basically going to get onto a floor vote here in another couple of steps. There are some other important legislation moving forward. PSE's electricity business is much easier to decarbonize than their gas business. Electricity you can create by lots of different ways, right? Wind, solar, and things like that. Gas is gas, mainly methane. By the way, there's some handouts on the back table, front tables, I guess depending on when you come in, about fracked gas. So definitely pick one of those up if you want to learn more. There's a bill 1589 which would decarbonize PSE's gas business. It would require them to shift customers from gas to other forms of renewable energy systems. And so that could, again, be a very significant change in terms of how the industry is required to operate. The other bill, two more that I want to mention, the Navigator bill. I don't know who's looked at how to find tax credits or benefits for, weatherizing your home or, getting an electric vehicle. I'm sure we've all heard about them, but I've collected like 20 different websites that purport to give you that information. Really confusing. So the Navigator bill would basically bring all of that in one place. one, and focused on Washington, not, by the way, if you're in Idaho, sorry, I'm not, right? Representative Rammel's been working to pass that bill now for this is the second time. And the state is working on basically their program for all of this incentives as well as federal. Another item is zero emission school buses, electric school buses. All right, and the money for that bill not only buys the buses, but of course you have to install the charging infrastructure in order to recharge those buses. And one person actually suggested that, our King County Metro and our Vashon Island School District bus areas are really pretty close together. They're only like, 3 or 4 blocks apart. Well, I don't know, maybe they're half a mile apart. But maybe the infrastructure for charging could be placed in a place that both, organizations could use it. But that is also moving forward. So we collectively, I'd love to say that it's going to be easy, right? And all this stuff just moves through. But we're really the underdogs here, right? We're the underdogs because what we're trying to do is overcome that capitalistic system that Marilee talked about. We've done it in CETA. As a matter of fact, the legislator has made motions on transportation with clean fuel standards, on hydrofluorocarbons, which is in our air conditionings, hugely impactful climate gas. There's now regulations on that. There's so many of these areas that regulations are now in place, but we do need to continue moving forward. And so that's why after passing CETA, realizing the power of that, and then being able to bring this environment climate agenda here. What do our groups here on the island, like Zero Waste Vashon, Fix It Cafe and others, what do they want to accomplish? And how can we get behind that and make that happen here? And so that is kind of where things are. And James is going to talk a little bit about how you can take action.
Community solar.
Oh, I do. I skipped over that, didn't I? No worries. Okay, community solar. Thank you, James. So one of the bills that didn't move forward was that community solar bill. There's a Washington State Energy Industry, Washington Solar Energy Industry Association, WASIA. And WASIA is behind that bill, that legislation. It turns out that we've identified 2 Vashon property owners who have a space for community solar. They want to put community solar in, and they called Senator Wynn to say, we really want you to pass that bill, and Fitzgibbon and Alvarado as well. The bill received an amendment which made it not as good as the organizers wanted, and so they decided to abandon for now and come back again next year. But in this process of identifying people who want to make this happen, we can also raise their voices to our legislators about, you're really talking about real things, real changes here in their district. Senator Wynn at one point heard about this and said, I really want to help make that happen. So we are able to help hold him to account to his desires and to his goals. We also have one property that is extremely visible from the highway that is also considering putting rooftop solar. It may not be community solar, but the notion that the more solar we see, the more we open our eyes to the potential of making that happen on the island. And so one thought is, let's work to do an island survey of where is the potential on Vashon Maury Islands for solar. We already have that super high record, right? But we're only number 6, okay? So there is the possibility to go even higher. And again, okay, James, thank you for keeping me honest. And
I'm going to hand these out. I'm going to hand them to a couple of people and ask you to pass them back. Good morning. Thank you for letting us join you today. My name is James Ricard. I live about a mile up the road here by the creek. I'm going to talk to you about 2 topics today, and they're kind of at opposite ends of the spectrum. One is a technological product that I want to talk to you a little bit about, and the other is something that many of us, I think, in the room are exceptionally passionate about, and that's climate change. And I'm going to talk to you a little bit about our efforts to create a climate action plan. Thank you. So the technological one is something called TAN, Take Action Network. Kevin was just sharing with you the status of some of the legislation that's moving through Washington State right now. Show of hands, how many of you are aware of all those bills that are being proposed and their current status? Okay, 2 tentative hands. Out of about 40 people, and I don't know how many are joining us on Zoom. TAN automates that process. The pieces of paper that are coming around give you the websites for it. We call it a bit.ly link. I like to think of bit as it's a bit. It's very small. Instead of a 35-character web address, what's on the paper gets you there. The Take Action Network is a way to more easily be aware of and up to date, not only on legislation, but on elections. We've been focusing on legislation right now because the legislature is in session. This year was a short 60-day session. What you do is you sign up for TAN. It sends an email to you for the things that you check a box and say, I'm interested in solar energy. I'm interested in gun control. In our congressional district, we're in the 34th. So it tracks the 34th. So if you're interested in something that's happening over on the other side of the mountains, TAN's not necessarily going to give you that information because it's where you can vote and where your representatives are. We will be moving and increasing our efforts through TAN on the elections. We also have a very robust platform for elections. And I'm not just talking about local city elections or county elections or state elections. I'm talking about other states' elections and national election. And what the software does the same way is allows you to track what's going on in different areas, but in this case, more so I think than in the legislation facility that TAN gives you. It's how do you want to volunteer, how do you want to use your time and energy to support elections? Texting, phone banking, letter writing, etc. And we track the nation and we track the most competitive states. So if you want a postcard to Arizona, you can do it through TAN. And all of this comes up to you. You don't really have to do anything except sign up for TAN and pick the things you want to follow, and TAN will notify you. Some things real quickly that we're tracking. So the 2024 elections, candidates to support in 2024, we have a Defend the Senate section, we have a Take Back the House section, we have the Defend the 8th for Kim Schreier, etc. So if those are things you're interested in, you can log in, get a TAN account, and it'll do the work for you. Okay. How am I doing here? Am I behind? A little.
I got you behind.
You're sweet, thank you. Vashon Mori Climate Action Plan, transitioning from tech to something that I'm deeply passionate about, and I see many nodding heads in the room. There's a small group of us that are trying to create a climate action plan for Vashon Mori Island. We've been working about 9 months, meeting monthly, beginning to collect data, beginning to create a plan, what it might look like, what would the rollout look like, how do we engage the community, et cetera. But at a little bit higher level, what got us going. So I'm going to read a little bit to you because it's easier for me, and that's being selfish, I apologize. Climate pollution anywhere creates climate impacts everywhere. So we can say we live on an island and we've got the 6th highest penetration of solar in the country. Do we just rest on our laurels and let the rest of the world take care of itself? We think not. We'd like to do more. So the Climate Action Plan is designed to help each of us consume less, recycle and sequester more, and shift our energy uses away from fossil fuels to renewable energy sources. Our goal is to create a living vehicle for maintaining the community qualities that make Vashon Murray Islands a healthy, small-town island community that is characterized as quaint, unique, keep Vashon weird, and ecologically sensitive. As an island community, we face some unique climate-related challenges: sea level rise, stronger storms with stronger storm surges, droughts, and reliance on surface streams, and a sole-sourced aquifer system for our water, to name a few. So we want to proactively prepare for those impacts and be more prepared to enable us to better adapt to climate change as it continues to occur. So our overall goal: reduce Vashon Murray climate pollution emissions and increase climate pollution sequestration. And I'll leave you with our vision, which is to reduce all greenhouse gases going into the atmosphere in order to restore, protect, and preserve the quality of life for residents and visitors of our islands. We want to make Vashon Murray a model for how communities can become carbon negative. So Kevin's going to talk to you about some ways to get involved and how we're moving forward. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, James. You really covered so much of the content and the approach. There's pathways for us to move forward. If people have heard about the Choose Plastic Free campaign, Celia Congdon and Nancy O'Connor, they said their next step is to talk to the retailers on the island to see if they can package their products in something that doesn't include plastic. That's what I call decarbonizing the supply side. And when we talk about those capitalist industries, can they help us decarbonize the supply side? The WRAP Act, can that make us use more environmentally friendly packaging? Those are all potential pathways to achieve success. There's 2 weeks left in the legislative session. When you choose to sign up with TAN, one of those links that James mentioned will give you that opportunity to sign up for legislative-related emails. Those bills I mentioned that have not yet been set aside this session, they could use your help. So that's where we ask if you're willing to jump in. There are also training sessions. Those handouts talk about how to sign up for a training session so you can get familiar with the product before you're committing to say, let me go ahead and use it. The other thing I'll say is that with this climate action plan, we've looked at actions being taken in other communities: Bainbridge, Bellingham area, and Thurston County. Together, that represents about 400 climate actions. It's an amazing list. And what we've done is we've mapped those actions to Vashon. Now, some things don't apply, like, don't put, fewer lanes on the highway. Well, we only have 2. So, it's not going to get us very far. But things like, reforesting, right? Things like solar, things like wind energy, perhaps. And what we've done is we've mapped those actions to island organizations. So when we talk about reforesting, I think of the Land Trust. When we think about all of the Bainbridge Island talking about electrifying the ferries, well, Washington State Ferries. When we talk about using electric vehicles instead of gas-powered vehicles and government agencies, well, we have a fire station, we have a school district with electric buses, for example. So we've done this mapping. There's about 40 or so different organizations we've mapped these actions to, and now we'd like to say, let's go talk to those folks. Let's see what they're already doing. What could they do more of, and what might be standing in their way? Is it a regulatory barrier? Is it a legislative barrier? And so another item on the table, and maybe, James, if you would be willing to go grab that and maybe see if you can have those passed out. I really like that idea. There's a question there that says, what's the biggest climate change that you'd like to make in your personal life? And what's the biggest thing that's standing in your way of accomplishing that? So if you're willing to share that, you could leave those forms filled out here with us, and we'll take that. Or you should also be able to, I think we're going to make sure that information gets out into the news, basically, that you produce after this session. You can share your name with us if you like. You don't have to. Basically, that will help us gain insight into what islanders are thinking about what we could do, and then maybe barriers that we should focus on removing. So it would be awesome if you want to share a little bit of insight there and share your name and information with us if you'd like. I'm happy if we have time for any questions, but... Okay, very good.
So that's really rich to hear about the range of activities, either at a local level or a state level. I haven't actually okayed this with them, but I think after our service, if you would want to grab some goodies and perhaps come back up here and have some time to drill down with Kevin and James on some of your further ideas, reflections. And I don't know if you two can stay for our potluck, but we could have a table if they can, and you can have an environmental climate action table and just throw it around and see what you come up with. So at least during, the time immediately after, if you're available, that's great. So thank you to both of you for your thoughtful words, your chance for us to learn more about a topic that affects us so deeply on the island. And as co-founder of Zero Waste Vashon, I do have to add that not only are we high in our energy use, but we are the highest in King County for what we send to the landfill. That is not the way to go. So again, it's part of rethinking our habits, rethinking our usage patterns, all of that. So I'll just add that in. So let's hold a moment of contemplation and worship, which is an old English word that means to consider things of worth in a generous and abundant silence. And after a bit of silence, we would love to have Kat play a piece as we reflect deeper on the words of Kevin and James.
Go to the water, walk down slow, where the rock is battered and the branch hangs low, where the sea is rough and the sun burns hotter. To know love, go to the water. You walk through the garden in the early spring, where the wild blossom was a growing thing. You press that flower in your favorite book, where it kept its color but never bore fruit. So go to the water, walk down slow, where the rock is battered and the branch hangs low, where the sea is rough and the sun burns hot. No love goes to the water. It laughs and shouts where it touches land, and it holds the world like a loving hand. It's a rock is battered and the branch hangs low, where the seas rise and the sun burns higher. To know love, go to the water. To know love, go to the water.
Thank you, Kat. The beauty of your music just fills our hearts. It's so wonderful. We're now going to pause the recording as we prepare for joys and concerns. There is a love.
There is a love holding me. There is a love holding all that I love. There is a love holding all. I rest in this love. There is a love holding us. There is a love holding all that we love. There is a love holding all. We rest in this love.
So as members and friends of the Vashon Island Unitarian Universalists, we commit to supporting our congregation. Financial resources help us pay speakers and staff, support our social justice programs, and maintain the building. So please support VIUU with your pledges and offerings so that we can continue to be the vital community you see around you. And our congregation engages beyond our walls for peace, social and economic justice, freedom of belief, and protection of our planet and its inhabitants. And once monthly, we contribute to we contribute our financial offering to a regional, national, or international organization that aligns with our values. This week's offering supports 350.org, and I'd like to invite Maya up to speak briefly about their important work.
So many of you may already be familiar with 350.org because it's been around a while, but I have a little blurb on it anyhow. 350.org is an international organization dedicated to building a climate movement. It was founded in 2008. One of the major founders was Bill McKibben, who wrote one of the first books on global warming for the general public, published in 1989 and entitled The End of Nature. 350 was named after the recognized safe level of parts per million of CO2 in the atmosphere. Unfortunately, we've surpassed that, being now at 424 as of 2023. However, we should note it is not 350's fault. 350 is active in grassroots campaigns across the globe, opposing coal plants, mega pipelines like the Dakota Access, and others, supporting renewable energy and also divestment from fossil fuels. It's actually been involved in the divestment of more than 1,500 universities, foundations, cities, and churches from fossil fuels for a total value of some $40 trillion. There are multiple local member groups of 350, I think surpassing 300, including in Seattle and in Tacoma, and our very own Vashon Island Climate Action Group. So it's a very worthy recipient of our offerings today.
So at this time, our greeters are going to be passing around the offering baskets, and as we offer that up, please join in singing "We Give Thanks," and the words are printed on the back of the laminated order of service and on the inside cover of the hymnal.
Gathered here, far away, what a time we share with love and care. We give thanks for this precious day. We give thanks for this precious day. All gathered here, those far away, what a time we share with love and care. We give thanks for this precious day.
We're now moving into our final reading, and Maya is going to come up and offer that. It's called "The Last Wolf."
So this is one of my favorite poems. It's actually up on a corkboard in my house. It's not really a happy poem. I grew up in San Francisco, and the poem takes place in San Francisco. It was written by an Alaska Native woman who lived for many years in San Francisco and wrote several books on poetry. If you know the city at all, you'll recognize the name of one of the streets in the poem. It's not about climate action per se, but more a comment on the destructiveness of the white sort of slash first world on our planet from an indigenous perspective. The Last Wolf by Mary Tallmountain. The last wolf hurried toward me through the ruined city, and I heard his baying echoes down the steep, smashed warrens of Montgomery Street and past the ruby-crowned high-rises left standing, their lighted elevators useless. Passing the flicking red and green of traffic signals baying his way eastward, in the mystery of his wild loping gait, closer the sounds in the deadly night, through clutter and revel of quiet blocks. I hear his voice ascending the hill, and at last his low whine as he came, floor by empty floor, to the room where I sat, in my narrow bed, looking west, waiting. I heard him snuffle at the door, and I watched. He trotted across the floor. He laid his long gray muzzle on the spare white spread, and his eyes burned yellow, his small, dotted eyebrows quivered. Yes, I said, I know what they have done.
Thank you, Maya, for that reading. And our last song is hymn 1064, Blue Boat Home. Please rise in body or spirit and join in singing that one found in your teal. It's in the teal hymnal, the teal one, not the gray. 1064.
Below me, I feel no motion, standing on these mountains and plains, far away from the rolling ocean. Still my dry land heart can say, I can say.
And now we're going to move to the chalice extinguishing with Pamela again.
This is called Making the Change. This is truth, not science fiction. Ordinary people whose suffering is real speak of their fears, the struggles they face, when survival becomes an ordeal. Landslides do not require subtitles. Hunger gains nothing in translation. Parched fields, failed crops, drought and devastation. Everything touches, life interweaves. Chainsaw and dust storm, ashes and leaves, exhaust pipe and chimney, acid and rain. Everything touches, unbroken chain. Here's a proof, if proof were needed. The evidence builds up day by day. Big business, fueled by oil and greed, cries wolf and looks the other way. Tweet and shout, turn up the volume. This is truth, not science fiction. Shame on the naysayers, the blind eyers, who deny the pain, the dereliction. Climate change affects us all, whether impoverished or well-to-do. Today, a village in Bangladesh. Tomorrow, a town near you. This is truth, not science fiction, related by women, daughters, and wives. Change is needed, for the climate is changing the world and changing our lives. Everything touches a planet in pain. For the sake of the children, repeat the refrain. Join in the chorus, let's make a difference. Together we can make the change. Join in the chorus, let's make a difference. Together we can make the change. That's by Roger McGough from Oxfam.
So our formal service is now over, and I'd like to give a special thanks to Kevin and James, and thank you for being here, fellas, and Kat, and Pamela, and Marilee, and Maya, and Mary. Julia. Oh. And this was setup group number 4. And if somehow you don't have a role yet in this congregation, there are lots of fun groups like that you can be part of. So come have a talk with one of us. We're moving now into our time of announcements, and these are VIUU announcements. So if you have something related to a VIUU activity, please come forward and tell us about it.
Hello, my name is